the reactor to the final AP college football rankings and giving my final college football rankings. So, of course, I've got Ohio State at number one, and the AP does too because they won the national championship. And they showed in the last four games that they were the best team in college football when they were playing at their best. And I've got Oregon at number two and Notre Dame at three. The AP's got Notre Dame at two and Oregon at three. But I did this because I think that Oregon was a little bit better of a team than Notre Dame because I think they were a little more of a complete team. And they did beat Ohio State once. But Notre Dame was actually an elite team this past season. This was the best team they've had since I've been watching college football, and I've been watching college football for between a decade and a decade and a half, and they deserve a lot of credit for coming back in the championship game and giving themselves a chance to win it late in the game. And Marcus Freeman, I think, is going to be one of college football's best coaches for a long time now. And I've got Ole Miss at number four. The AP has Texas at number four, but I chose Ole Miss because they dominated Georgia, who I've got it at number five. And Georgia, even though they won the SEC, they had the same record as Ole Miss, except for getting that extra game, in the SEC championship. I think Ole Miss, when playing at their ceiling this past season, was actually the SEC's best team, and I think they could have been competitive in the college football playoff. And I put Georgia at five and Texas at six because even though Texas got two more wins than Georgia did, Georgia beat Texas twice. I think Georgia actually was the second best team in the SEC this past season, and Texas was the third best. Penn State is five in the AP, and Georgia is sixth. I put Penn State at seven because even though, of course, they were a really good team, they didn't get any huge wins. They lost to the three best teams that they played, and their best win would have either been against SMU or Boise State, which are teams that I think were a little bit overrated. And I've got Arizona State at number eight. Arizona State is at seven in the AP, and Boise State is eight. So Arizona State, showed that they actually were a really good team when they almost beat Texas. And if Jordan Tyson had played, at wide receiver, they might have won that game. And Kenny Dillingham, I know, has only been a head coach for two seasons and only had the one good season, but I have a feeling that he's going to be one of college football's best coaches now. And number nine, I've got BYU. Tennessee is number nine in the AP. I chose BYU because they maybe should have been in the college football playoff. Not because they blew out Colorado, because Colorado was just a joke, but they did beat SMU, in the regular season, and they played really close with Arizona State. BYU, I think, was actually the second best team in the Big 12 this past season. And I've got Indiana at 10, and that's where the AP has got them. So Indiana, I don't think deserves to be ranked any higher than this because they didn't get any big wins. They lost to the two best teams they played. Their best win came against Michigan, who was a five-loss team. And number 11, I've got Iowa State. Ole Miss is number 11 in the AP. So Iowa State, I think, deserves to be ranked this high because they did get two pretty good wins against Kansas State and Miami, but they obviously weren't a great team because they got destroyed by Arizona State, in the conference championship. And I've got Tennessee at 12, SMU is 12 in the AP. So Tennessee, did get the win over Alabama, but Alabama, wasn't near as good this past season. So beating them wasn't the same as it was before. And 13, I've got Illinois. They actually were a pretty good team, it turns out, because they beat South Carolina in the bowl game, and they beat them by more than Alabama did. And 13 in the AP is BYU. And at 14, I've got Alabama. And I know this might seem kind of high because they were only 9-4, but they did get a big win against Georgia, and I think Alabama actually was a top 15 team this past season, and I put them ahead of LSU and South Carolina because Alabama beat both LSU and South Carolina, and I put LSU at 15 and South Carolina at 16 because LSU beat South Carolina, and the AP didn't even rank LSU, which I think was wrong because LSU also got a big win over Ole Miss. And 16 in the AP is Illinois, and 15 is Iowa State, and then 14 is Clemson. And 17, I've got Boise State. The AP has Alabama at 17th. I put Boise State only at 17 because I do think that they were a little bit overrated, but I still think they were a pretty good team because, they did compete with Penn State, even though the final score was pretty bad for Boise State. It was the game well into the fourth quarter. And then I've got 18 Missouri, and Miami is 18 in the AP. So Missouri, even though they won 10 games in the SEC, they did it without any big wins. And number 19, I've got Clemson. South Carolina is 19 in the AP. I put South Carolina higher than that because their defense was so good. And Clemson, I don't think was great, even though they did win their conference. They got destroyed by Georgia, who Alabama beat, and then they lost to South Carolina. So that's why I've got Alabama and South Carolina ranked ahead of Clemson and LSU. But I did put Clemson ahead of SMU, who I've got at 20. Even though SMU finished with a better overall record than Clemson did, SMU lost to Clemson in the ACC championship. And 20 in the AP was Syracuse. I've got Syracuse at 21 and Miami at 22 because Syracuse beat Miami, and 21 in the AP is Army. I did not rank Army because they did not beat anybody any good, and 22 is Missouri in the AP, and I've got Kansas State at 23rd. And they're not ranked in the AP, but the AP has Colorado ranked 25th, and that does not make sense to me because Kansas State and Colorado have the exact same record, and Kansas State beat Colorado. And I didn't rank Colorado because they didn't beat a team that had lost less than 5 games this season. And Miami, even though I've only got them at 22nd, they did get a win over Louisville, who was a pretty good team who I've got at 24th. I ranked Louisville, even though the AP didn't, because they did get a good win over Clemson. 24 in the AP is Memphis, and 23 is UNLV. I didn't rank either of those two teams because they didn't get any great wins, the same as Army, and I ranked Michigan at 25th because of the way they finished the season. But that will be it with this video, and please subscribe, and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.